Okay, let's start on the DXY on the weekly time frame. And last week already we were looking for dollar long plays, and we did get this bullish weekly candle here on the DXY. It's not the strongest close here on the 4-hour time frame. We can see we are in a larger retrace in the dollar. However, we got here price started to stall in this area here. We did look last week for a bit more development in this area for a long continuation. Instead, dollar just rallied a bit higher. And now I'm looking for a slightly larger pullback in the dollar pairs into these areas, potentially up to this high here before we then see a bigger reaction. Ideally, we see price stalling a bit in this area here to accumulate a bit more volume, which then would be enough to at least break through these levels here to the left into this high. Of course, if we see price breaking impulsively below this area of interest here, then followed by a lower time frame bearish continuation, I would change my bias and look for more dollar weakness again. But right now, going into next week, my overall bias is a bit more towards US dollar long. Euro US dollar, therefore, we are looking for shorts. It's not the nicest price action we see here because price did tap into this area of interest, filled this week here, and we had a bullish reaction here on the 4-hour time frame. So ideally, again, we see price remains in this area a bit, accumulating more volume, retesting this low here to the left. On the other hand, like overall, even if price is starting to go a bit more aggressive into this liquidity area and we see a V-shaped recovery followed here by a lower time frame bearish continuation, then that's also totally fine with me. So that would still fit my overall bearish bias for the Euro US dollar. Australian dollar US dollar, of course, therefore here we look for shorts as well. On the daily time frame, we can see we had quite a nice impulsive run to the downside already. Here on the 4-hour time frame, we did tap into this smaller liquidity area here. We have here some areas of interest on the left, and we are now forming a structure just below this liquidity area. And I'm now looking for price to form a structured 1-hour continuation flag to the downside. You could argue that price already did that. We have here small liquidity area. We have a gap. We filled the gap here. So this would already be a nice continuation flag. However, looking on the size of the overall move we had already and these larger continuations here, this is not enough for me to warrant a trade to the downside. So that I'd like to see slightly more because in proportions that's not in a proper sequence. Pound US dollar is a bit a counter trade in that regard. We have here on the daily time frame, we had this nice impulsive move to the downside. We retraced more than 50% here of the previous day's candle, and we tapped these lows here. We filled these 2 wicks and turned around. So therefore, even after this run, there could be room for a slightly larger pullback, even though we still have an overall bearish bias. But in terms of where we are positioned, this pullback could be slightly larger into this area. And looking how this formed here, we had nice momentum here, price starting to stall. So we are forming here a smaller continuation. On the lower time frame here, we can see on the 15-minute, since it's going into Asia session, I would not be surprised if price is forming a slightly larger continuation pattern into this liquidity area here, which then would be ready into London opening, and that would be perfect for a short-term long trade, at least into these areas here, which is more than enough room to manage the trade, even though the overall bias would then lean more towards the bigger short. New Zealand dollar, US dollar on the 4-hour time frame. We can see here as well, we had a very aggressive run to the downside already. Nice sequence here. We left this clear liquidity area. We are now starting to stall, but there's nothing here really on the left to worry about. So if we form a deliberate at least 1-hour structure, or preferably here, that's the 4-hour time frame, then that would definitely be enough volume to carry price down to these lows here. That would be an amazing trade, but that takes some time. You could argue there are potential longs in here as well, very similar to pound US dollar, which we discussed just before. We do have this liquidity area here, this very strong hook point, and we have here some structures. So you could argue to, if it's a momentum play, to enter a short after a developed structure here. Is again similar to what we discussed in Australian dollar, US dollar. That would be out of proportion, so not enough. So therefore, a short-term long would be more feasible. So if you see price breaking above here early next week, followed by a lower time frame continuation, then that might be an option for a short-term long into these highs here, and then price might still form a larger bearish continuation in the longer term. So however, I mean, we just forecast all possible scenarios so that we are not surprised for whatever price is doing, and we can then react accordingly. That's actually the whole idea of this over forecasting, basically. US dollar, Swiss francs, similar to last week. I'm still looking for the long continuation. We did tap this low here. Let's go to the daily time frame for the positioning. You can see here we did tap the previous low here with this very nice bullish low test candle. We then get some bullish momentum. We had here, we left here this high here to the left. We did tap into this liquidity area here to the left as well. You can see that here, and then price started to react correctively from the high. And because this price nature here is more corrective, I'm leaning more towards a long in this area. So for price to forming a second high here for a structured long continuation, this would be completely different here. We tapped the high, and if price reacted a bit more aggressively here in this area, then of course I would look for the shorts. But the clue is a bit here in the price nature after tapping the high here. Because of the corrective nature, I'm still leaning more towards the high, even though the positioning overall would also warrant a short trade. Euro Australian dollar, on the daily time frame, we can see here we had a very nice bullish momentum run. We did tap this fairly significant area of interest here to the left. There's still enough room to the upside. I'm leaning more towards overall a long play, and because we had a few failed structures here, we had this nice V-shaped recovery, an initial reaction from it, but then we failed to sell off. We see that clearer here on the 1 hour time frame what price did. We had a very nice run up here into this previous area of interest to the left. So this is a nice V-shaped recovery with structure. Then we failed to continue here the first time. We came back up. We then retapped this low here to the left, and we started to form this continuation structure here, an initial first V-shape again, then a corrective price action, a middle section, a very nice 1, 2, 3, failed to continue to the downside again. Instead, we broke out of the structure, and we left here this liquidity area to the left and get some bullish momentum. And now we are kind of stalling in no man's land, so with enough room to at least the previous highs. So if price is forming just a slightly higher second top here than we are right now, and then closing the gap, I'm definitely looking to enter longs in this area. Euro Canadian dollar, a long as well, and the explanation is very, very similar. We had a very significant, that's a weekly high, I think, a significant value area here to the left, this one, and we tapped that on the 4 hour time frame. We can see we even tapped it, go back. We even tapped it in form of a head and shoulder here with the 1, 2, 3. Then we tapped this low here again, failed to continue to the downside. Instead, we now starting to see a bullish momentum run again to the upside. So it was a bit stalling here. There is some argument for a long trade in here. And we are now looking for a bullish continuation, preferably even retesting this, or here 15 minutes is not the biggest structure, so we are looking for a long continuation in that area. Euro New Zealand dollar on the daily time frame, similar like we saw on a Euro Canadian dollar. We did break above these fairly significant value areas here to the left. We had an initial sell-off reaction, failed to continue to the downside. Instead, we have here a very nice bullish momentum run and are trading completely above this whole price action here. And I'm now looking for a long continuation. After this momentum run, I would not be surprised if price takes a few days to accumulate a bit more volume, form some structure before we can enter a long continuation. I'm looking at this area here as a potential area for longs. Why this area? Because price broke above the high to the left here in form of this bullish continuation, then formed this running channel and is now starting to stall, a bit corrective price action. And we do now with retraces and that they tend to go back into the start of the previous structure, which would be this small running channel, and that's why that would be my first area to look for potential longs. Pound Australian dollar on the daily time frame, fairly straightforward. We looked at that before as well. We had here a bit corrective price action and then now forming a flat structure, and we are looking for these kind of flat structures fairly often. On the 4-hour time frame, we can see here we have a nice middle section here. We are now looking for price to retest this previous high here to then enter short continuations. Australian dollar, Swiss francs on the 4-hour time frame as well. We are looking for short continuations for a while, and it looks like we are now forming basically a smaller version of this bigger 1, 2, 3 structure here to the left. And we do see here on the daily there are quite a lot of wicks here, so it failed to really sell off yet. So I'm looking for price to go back up one more time, filling all these wicks, and then I would look for a short continuation in this area. So that's it. That's my watch list for next week. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye bye.